Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, welcome back to another Astro Chat. I'm Kimberly Williams, and I'm joined today with Anne Sundell and Monica Anna. And if you want information about us, check out the bio. All of our links are there. For those of you joining us on YouTube, I will try to put a timestamp below of what we're talking about and when it comes up. And if you're listening to us on one of the wonderful podcast platforms, welcome back. We're glad to have you. Some information about what we're looking at. We're looking at the full moon in April, right? And it is going to be happening on April 16th, which is Saturday, 7:55 p.m. That's for Greenwich Mean Time. So subtract 6 hours if you're living here in Central Time, add 2 hours if you're in Finland, and wherever else you're at, convert accordingly. So, Anne, why don't you start us off talking about the full moon?
The full moon in Libra. I mean, the full moon, I feel that that's a time of taking it easy, letting the feelings come and go, and think about how far we have come from the new moon. And in Libra, I think about relationships. I think about equality, of being fair, of finding the balance in the life and thinking about these things. With Libra, I feel that it's a lot of happening in the head and maybe not so much in the physical world, maybe. What do you think?
I agree. Especially that part about balance. I know that Libra is for many people about relationship, and that's a piece, but I'm really feeling the full moon energy this year is bringing up what do we need to have a sense of balance in our life and in our world.
Yeah. Well, I agree that Libra can be stuck in their heads because it is an air sign. It is a lot about thinking and processing information. And yes, we do talk about the relationships with Libra because Libra individualistic energy. So what happens at the full moon, we have a sun in Aries and moon in Libra, and we have that opposition between what is me, what's my needs, and how do I go into the world. And when I go into the world, effectively I manage relationships. With others, whether it's in a workplace, in social group, whether it's in a family. When I enter the world, I enter the world of other people, and that is the balance. How do I look after my own needs, my own desires, my own path, and how do I compromise some of that to allow space for others and for their desires and for their path and for their needs as well. So it is very much about negotiating that balance. It's never, I love that when we're talking about balance, we always think about, being equal, but balance is really very often kind of pushing from one extreme to another to find what's appropriate. You need to go to extreme to push it to extreme, and then to another extreme to find that middle ground. And I think a lot of the time in relationships is very similar. We're pushing and pulling to find that kind of middle ground where we both feel comfortable. So yeah, Libra full moon will definitely be be about that. But also full moon for me, full stop, regardless of the sign, it's about celebrating. So there are a few things that I always think about full moon. Full moon is about celebrating achievements. You know, we came to the peak of the cycle from the new moon until the full moon, whether it's the new moon 2 weeks before, whether there's the new moon 6 months before or earlier. That's the peak of the cycle. So we achieved something. We can celebrate something. We're in that light of the full moon. We can see all that journey that we've done. Full moon, it's about Kimberly, you mentioned that earlier when we were talking off camera, about letting go, because that's the moment when the scales tip into the waxing phase, into releasing of the energy. So that's the moment where we release something. At the new moon, we gather up to come up to the moon. So it's that waxing energy of gaining something. And then at full moon, we tip the scales and we go, okay, now it's the time to release everything until the next new moon. And full moon for me, again, is looking at those pair of opposites, because they're always in the sun is in the opposite sign to the moon. So again, looking at the pair of opposite of those archetypes, and with both luminaries being there in the horoscope, I always feel like there's so much light that you can't hide the shadows. So the shadow of those archetypes come up to the surface, and it's easier to see it. It's easier to see which archetypes am I closer to. Am I closer to Libra, and I'm very aware of people's needs and repressing mine, or am I very close to Aries and I am very around my needs, and then not so much care about other people and how they feel, because I want something and I want to get it. So for me, those three things are always around full moon: the letting go, looking at the shadow, and celebrating something.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I agree. I love full moon energy because it's literally like we're standing between two worlds, right? We've had 2 weeks of that wonderful, beautiful moon waxing and growing and getting brighter and brighter. And then we're here. And in the exact moment of culmination, we're here, we've arrived, its fullness is the exact same moment that we start the next 2 weeks of it waning and the moon becoming smaller. And so this energy of bringing something up and having it full and letting it go and releasing, like 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in that world, for me, holds so much power. I love it. And I agree that it's hard to not see what comes up in the full moon energy. Whatever comes up, especially if it's shadow work, like the things that come up, we cannot hide from it. It is no longer in the recesses of our mind. It's front and center. That sun is shining light and I need to see it. And what I really like about the Libra full moon is so often I find Libra energy is more focused on others and less focused on self. But here we've got the sun in Aries saying, no, I have to be focused on myself as well. And I think this is a great time in terms of having balance and relationship. It's a great time to really figure out, what do I need from others? What do others need from me? In other words, it's not just about others at my expense. It's not about me at their expense. It's literally the intertwining and this holding both energies and thinking about, okay, if I'm going to have peace and balance in my life, what do I need to give more? Where do I need to like maybe ask for more support? And we can do this shifting back and forth until we find a nice place. And something else you said resonated with me, the idea that people think of balance as a static, two halves and we don't move. And I had a life coach one time tell me how balance is a verb. Balance is literally balancing, right? That things are constantly in motion, and that if we're just moving a little up and down, that's balance. When things tilt dramatically to where the one side of the scales is coming down and we have no movement, that's when we're out of balance. But ideally, it's I give to you, you give to me with this Aries Libra, right? There's a give and then there's a take and then there's a give, and we're flowing, and that it works if we stay in that flow. I don't know. That's kind of where my head's wrapping around it.
Yeah, and I think about what's fair in the situation, to look at the situation objectively and find not what I want, what you want from the balance between Aries and Libra, but what is fair for everybody in the situation right now. To evaluate that thing I think Libras are so very good at.
Yeah. I mean, we set up at the new moon in Aries, we set up our intention, and it's very much about my drive, my desires, my plans, what do I want to achieve? And then we have a full moon in Libra. And I think it's when we're talking about recognizing relationship and gratitude, again, full moon for me, it's very much about gratitude as well. I achieved something. Again, this full moon brings the focus on, okay, all those intentions that I set up for myself, being very, selfish, not in a bad way, but just very self-oriented. Actually, what I'm doing I'm either celebrating it with people that are around me. So even if I achieved, I don't know, I've reached Olympic gold, in sprint. Yes, I achieved that, but I don't celebrate as one person, back at home with my medal. I celebrated with my family, with my friends, with my fans. We celebrate our achievements with people, but also we can recognize at the full moon as well that to achieve the new moon intention that we set in Aries, we need people as well. That on that path, for the last 2 weeks, or again, however, whichever cycle we look at, so on that path between the new moon and then peak at the full moon, we needed others to help us, to guide us, to maybe prompt us, to introduce us. We needed those connections to achieve the goals that we have. We do not work and live in vacuum. So again, the full moon for me in Libra, it's about celebrating those connections, celebrating those relationships that we have. But also, it is about the shadow. It is about looking at those two archetypes and looking where things are out of balance in our lives. So am I too selfish? Am I too narcissistic? Am I too self-absorbed? Am I too concentrating on me and my needs to the point when it actually ruins my relationships because I don't see the other? Or on the flip side, am I so concentrated on the other, like Libra can be, being that mediator, that I am afraid of the conflict, that I am willing to compromise myself and my needs and my desires for the sake of keeping peace, for the sake of keeping harmony, for the sake of keeping balance. This is another side of Libra that, we know very well that Libra will keep a balance, sometimes at the cost to them. They're this ideal mediator of the zodiac, but sometimes it comes at the cost of them not knowing what they want and how to assert what they want. So again, full moon shines the light into that and asks us that question: which side of that archetypal pair are we on? And very often we're not on one on all the other. Very often we are both, because that's the beauty of the paradox of life and paradox of astrology. Depending on the relationships, depending on the environment that we're probably on playing a part on both. We might be super assertive and super driven, Aries energy at work, and then very compromising at home and keeping harmony at home and keeping things quiet at home because we don't want that extra competitive energy in that place. So very often we have those two faces or those two masks, not in a positive way, those two sides of us in different parts of life. So it's interesting, again, at the time of full moon and that light shining, to see under that light, where is my shadow hiding? Where am I out of balance with those energies?
Yeah. And is it intentional too? Because just thinking about the fact that the sun is in Aries, Aries is an energy that, depending on what you do for a living, depending on the environment that you were brought up in, the family dynamics, depending on your gender, right? Our society, especially Western societies, Western cultures, there's a very set guidelines, messages we receive, conditioning, if you will, that we get about what is or isn't acceptable. right? It's often the case, especially I live in the south of the United States, and here quite often the message to women is you should be sweet, you should be demure, and you can shine, but you should do it in a more loving, kind, passive way. Venus energy, Cancer energy, like these energies are very acceptable for women. Aries energy, not so much. And so a lot of times the message is this is scary. I know for myself, we were just talking earlier about how my inner Aries is being activated this month with all of our lunations. It's scary to shine and to shine as me, and for me to put me, myself, and I out there, because now I'm risking so many things.
Mhm.
It's so easy to then say, oh, let me go to the other side. I can't stand in my power. I can't shine my energy. I can't make it about me because, well, somebody needs me. So sometimes I think it's also when we've got the full moon, one side can create some of the fears that's tied up with that shadow you're
Mhm.
mentioning. And as a result, we look to the other side to save us from having to face those fears. So just, yeah.
I am so glad you're bringing that up, because that's so important. I mean, in any zodiacal opposition, in any of those archetypal pairs, it's important, but especially with Aries in Libra, with that Mars ruling Aries and Venus ruling Libra, we have that typical gender opposition that binary opposition that is so prevalent and so toxic to a certain degree. And even astrology shows us that there is no one or the other. It's the integration of both that really makes the chart. It's not like you have half of the chart but you don't have half of the other chart. Effectively, each of us have a full chart and all those archetypes somewhere in our lives. So we should be able to express them. But like you bringing up, depending on the culture, on the religion, on the family that you've been brought up, there is certain expectations from those two energies. So that energy of being competitive, aggressive, knowing what you want, going boldly for what you want, that's assigned to certain types in our society. And then that energy, like you say, of Libra, being the peacemaker, being the mediator, keeping harmony, creating beauty, again, assigned to specific roles, or specific gender, or specific, cultural construct. It's so damaging on all front, because the people who are kind of perceived in that Libra way, they have difficulty expressing that Aries energy, because it's not what the society, what the culture, what the family taught them to. So it's completely new ground. It's breaking that new ground. Again, this is a great example of toxic masculinity, standing in that Aries and not being able to reach to Libra, being so aggressive and so dominant that you're unable to understand the other, to find that balance, to compromise. And by compromise, I mean making space for the other, for other needs. So yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible energy. I always think that the sun going through Aries or going through Libra brings those polarities really strong. I'm so glad, Kimberly, you brought that up, because it's such a, I mean, we could have an episode only about that.
Yeah, I think at some point we need to have an episode on the shadows for each sign, because heaven knows that's where we all three of us seem to go. I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Anne? I think I jumped in.
No, I just thought about also in astrology, the gender roles in astrology and how they're being used. That could be one episode.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's so true. That's true, so true. I mean, I always say, the natal chart, if you've never seen your natal chart, go on a free website, drew that chart, and have a look at that, because you can see there is no one side or the other. It's a circle. Everything is within you. So unfortunately, through the last few hundred years of society, we assign certain qualities to certain planets or to certain types. And I always say there is a difference between the energy that we're talking about and the difference between the gender. That's that assignment, that's kind of those two being so closely linked. I don't agree with that. I think that was a constructed way later. The energy, I understand. Assigning that energy to a certain gender, not quite with it. I don't think that's quite the language of the stars. But again, completely different episode. Maybe we should. Maybe we should. Maybe for next year for Valentine's Day we can do that. Or for Libra season, maybe we can do that on the Libra season. But talking about interesting energy, this full moon is closely square by Pluto. So the reason why we're talking about the shadow of those planetary archetypes, it's also because Pluto brings that transformational energy here. It brings the powerful energy from the Capricorn side. So again, that kind of energy of what's the power of Capricornian convictions, of Capricornian structures, of societal structures that we bring into those pair of opposites. Exactly what we were just talking about, how we are brought up and conditioned and a way to and taught to think about those roles within our own lives, within the society. What's the role of Aries, what's the role of Libra. Pluto is coming from that and says, okay, we need to transform that. And often, as you might hear in astrology and astrologists talking, Pluto doesn't mess around. It's not like, oh, let me think about it. No. It comes in and it rips everything, and it kind of builds everything back up. So there was a lovely story that I've heard from one of the astrologers that I like. And she was talking about Pluto transit and transforming a kitchen. What she didn't realize is that before you actually build all those nice shelves and put all those nice appliances, you have to rip everything out. And that's what Pluto sometimes does to us. It needs to rip everything out to start building something fresh, because we need to go down into the foundation, down into the basement, down into the nitty-gritty, the ugly, to actually clean up and then build something stable. What do you guys think about that Plutonian energy?
Well, we're having a T-square with Pluto, the Sun, and the Moon here. So I think it's, Scorpios doesn't mess around. We know that. So then about transcending that energy, I was looking at the Sabian symbol for this. And that's kind of interesting because it is consciousness able to transcend the conflicts and pressures of the personal life. So I think this is quite something that we can think about at this point, and how we can. Like they told about, the Scorpio has the different layers. You have the eagle. You have the lower parts of Scorpio, the sign, and you can always choose how you want to use that energy and how you want to transcend it. Do you want to look at the things from above, like the eagle, and see the bigger picture, or do you want to dwell in those lower layers of the sign? So there's always a process with Pluto in changing that energy to something else, and maybe something better than we can at first see.
Absolutely. And two, when Pluto is in Capricorn, like it has been, I see Capricorn as the architect of the zodiac. So I would echo what you were saying, Monika, about, there's a lot of looking at what is good. Okay, we need to rip that out, put that aside. We're going to use that in the rebuild. And then there's a lot that has to just be torn down, thrown out, overhauled, if you will. And for me, when I work with Pluto, it is always about reclaiming our power. It is always about empowerment. And so either we have allowed someone to take power away from us, to power over, to push us around, or we have allowed people who perhaps power under, who are the martyr victims, who do other things to sabotage us. But in some way, shape, or form, we've stepped into with Pluto, right? There's that wake-up call of we've stepped into the game about not owning my own power. And often that's because of a fear. I think this is why Pluto is so wrapped up with the fear. If I reclaim my power, if I stand up to someone I'm in relationship with, going back to the fact it's squaring the Aries Libra full moon energies, if I stand up to somebody I'm in relationship with and ask for what I need, I might be afraid they'll tell me no. I might be afraid that they'll leave me. I might be afraid that there'll be an argument. I might be afraid of fill in the blank. The fear of the what if stops me, perhaps, from making it about myself. I'm afraid that I will feel guilty. Like there's so many fears that can happen, but over time, if we stay and make action and decisions from a place of fear, right, then we wind up losing our power, giving it away, not utilizing it. And so Pluto's job, I believe, is to say, hey, let's reclaim that power. Let's take it back. And the way it's going to happen is, yes, you are going to face the thing you are afraid of. And whether your biggest fear comes true or it winds up being a hypothetical, boogeyman under the bed that isn't real, isn't really Pluto's concern. It's that you face the fear, regardless of whether it manifested or not in reality. Now you can reclaim that power. Now you can move forward. So I think the fact that we mentioned in our last new moon episode about Pluto trining and sextiling the north and south nodes, working harmoniously with them. I think if we kind of weave that together with the fact that now at this lunation, there's a square to that full moon, it says to me that this is very powerful energy, and it's time for us to rebuild what we want in our relationships.
I have to say, I love what you're bringing and all the words that you've been using. I can literally just hear Saturn, with that fear. And it's interesting. We did say we're not going to mention that transit, but I really want to bring it, even if it's just for the mention. At the full moon, the Saturn is squaring nodal axis. So again, everything that we've been talking, you just mentioned about that fear of the power and power struggle, that's also the nodal axis with the Scorpio and the Taurus, being afraid of that south node in Scorpio, of that power and being overpowered, and maybe giving up your power because you have that need for Taurus, for safety, for security. So that is, it's really tense full moon, given that there are two strong T-square, one from Pluto to the moon and sun, and one from Saturn to the nodal axis. So we have those two gods, one of underworld and one of god of time and fear, squaring quite sensitive points at the time of full moon. So it might be really powerful full moon, stirring a lot of energies within us. And what you were saying about reclaiming power, it's also, again, going back to looking at the shadow and being honest with ourselves. So when we say, having a shadow work, for me, that just means being honest with ourselves and not projecting onto the world or onto other people. But that idea of, am I disempowered and I'm trying to claim my power back, like Kimberly was just saying, or am I playing the power games in relationships? Let's be honest with each other. Let's look in a mirror. Am I the one that people fear in relationship, or am I the one that disempower others, whether it's at work, whether it's in relationships, whether it's as a parent? How do I relate to others? How do I assert myself and still have space for other people need? Am I a boss and manage someone? And do I support them and their needs and find that balance between what is my responsibility, that Saturnian responsibility, or am I just disempowering them and taking over any project, any idea, any task? So it's really interesting full moon. I think it might be, we can use, if you work with lunation, you can really use that full moon to look in a mirror and look into your relationships and see them in a different light, pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Saturn is also doing a trine to the moon. Yeah. So you can use that energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could talk forever. Actually, I could talk forever. Speaking for myself, I love talking about Pluto. There's just no end to the depths we can drill there. Are we ready to move into Pisces, or is there more to say about this Pluto
Depths
square?
of Pluto, pun intended.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught
Yeah,
that.
I think we can move to Pisces because that will be nice, kind of rounding up of that tense, difficult full moon. Maybe not difficult, challenging full moon.
Yeah.
With that Piscean energy.
So the first thing that stood out for me was when we talked 2 weeks ago about at that Astro Chat about the Aries new moon, we were mentioning that Venus and Mars were in Aquarius with Saturn, right? They were all conjunct. They were making aspects to that lunation. There was a lot of what's going on with relationship. Now we're talking again about relationship because we've got a full moon in Libra. And here we see that those fast moving planets have moved. They've shifted into Pisces. So again, for me, whenever Venus and Mars are traveling close to each other like this, there is going to be an element of relationship energy. Like this energy is working itself out in relationships in some way. And when they're together in Pisces, there's two kinds of relationships that come to my mind. One is on the human level, and one is on the spiritual level. On that human level, our personal relationships, I think it's very easy with this energy to fall into, well, who's playing the martyr, who's maybe being the victim, who feels that they need to have more pity, who feels taken advantage of, who, even if it's not done in a overt passive aggressive way, just that you don't understand just how much I'm giving or how much I'm suffering, or that kind of energy can happen. Of course, the other fish with Pisces is this idea of we can open up on very profound spiritual levels when we get out of our mind and out of our daily routines and out of the daily grind, and we're with the people we care about. Or maybe it's not people, we're with spirit, we're with nature, we're with our fur babies, we're with the people where we can drop the guardedness that happens in day-to-day life. There's this amazing potential to really open up and to merge and to be one. I mean, I see this and I instantly think that with this chart, like this is a great time for anyone who's into the Tantra traditions. Like this energy is just flowing, where our whether it's our third eye or our crown, or we're just connecting and we're becoming one, and it's wonderful and it's juicy. But it's really a struggle to do the day-to-day work when I want to just merge into everything that's resonating. The other thing, and then I will stop talking because I want to hear your thoughts. There's just so much energy happening here. The other thing is we mentioned last time about the exact conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter at 24 degrees of Pisces. Well, it's not exact by minutes anymore, but it's still partile. It's still exact to the degree. So whatever seeds we planted 2 weeks ago at that new moon about this Neptune spirituality, perhaps dream orientation, perhaps rose-colored glasses, perhaps illusion, and Jupiter expanding that, right? We're still in that energy. It's still being carried forward, I think. So, wow, this just says to me there's something huge and expansive if we let ourselves dream the dream, if we're staying in a place of envisioning. But when it's about stepping into the building and the creating and the reality, it might be a little too soon for some of that, or that might be where we hit the bumps, where other people maybe don't share the same dream we have. It might be a really good time to try to get the people we partner with on board so that we're on the same page about our vision of what will happen. And there's more I could say, but at the moment I'm going to pause because I'm talking a lot. Because I've been staring at this Pisces energy. For those who don't know, I have a whole lot of Virgo placement. So when I see this much Pisces, part of me kind of goes, whoa, what is that going to mean? So y'all take it away.
It's going to be wet. But yeah, it is, again, the planets that rule this lunation. So the Venus who rules moon, the full moon, and Mars who rules that sun in opposition that full moon to that moon. They're both in Pisces, and I love that you mentioned that there is this kind of possibility for the martyrdom and being, being the victim. And it's like, oh, I'm always the one in relationship, which goes again with that energy. If we haven't worked on that Aries Libra energy within our lives, within ourselves, there is that potential of like, oh, I am always the one who's underappreciated, who I always give in a relationship, and what about me? But also for me, Pisces energy, especially with Venus and Mars there, this is the kind of dreamy energy that we can fall victim to when we think, oh, I found my Prince Charming and now I will live happily ever after. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I don't, I am romantic at heart, I do believe in romantic stories, and I love them. But every romance that I've ever heard, none of them were like Disney or Hollywood movies. They were very different, and everyone has a beautiful story, but they are what they have in common. They have that realness in common. And I think with that Piscean energy, we can go into that kind of dream la la land of, our eyes met and then we got married and we lived happily ever after in his castle. And it's dangerous, because what happens when we have that first infatuation with someone, when we first fall in love, that's not what actually holds relationship together. We do need, in a way, we do need a Capricorn and Cancer energy there. We need structure, and we're nurturing. So with Piscean energy, there is this kind of full moon of, am I going to lose my head and just fall madly in love with someone? And as soon as the Venus will move to Aries, I'll be like, well, that's done then. That was nice and quick. And hey, that might be a perfect opportunity for nice affair, nice fling, nice, kind of something beautiful and romantic and flowy and dreamy, but not necessarily stable and concrete and made to last.
Yeah.
Again, not a prediction, disclaimer, not a prediction. But that's the energy that we need to be aware of. So if in a few months' time, you'll go like, well, why did that not last it? Or have you been disillusioned by what you thought was the picture perfect?
Yeah. Very true. And thoughts about all of this Neptunian energy?
It's a good energy for artists and musicians. Very inspiring. But yeah, you can fall in love with love. You can lose yourself. You can get a bit addicted to the love, I think, during this period. So I agree with what Monika said about this energy.
Yeah.
I love what you said, that kind of the love, being in love with love.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and it can be incredibly creative. It can produce, especially with that Jupiter and Neptune, it can produce beautiful things. And we can be, infatuated with life itself, just find that beauty and love everywhere, in nature, in our spirituality, in other people. And it can be really heart opening as well. Energy. It's like with everything, like whenever we talk about archetypes, all of them, they have layers and they have different sides to them, both the light and the dark side, the more difficult side of the archetype and the more easygoing for us. So they can manifest in multiple ways.
Yeah. And don't forget, Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. And this to me is an indication that when we're on the personal level, this energy can be really difficult. it can be hard to stay in balance. Going back to that Libra moon, it can be hard. It can be easy to lose the balance. This is the perfect partner. This is the ideal job. That idea of idealism, of putting things up on a pedestal, of I'm so in love with love. All of that can flow. But by the same token, when we're not coming from that personal place, to me, Venus and Pisces is about unconditional love. It is about opening up our heart space, not person to person, but soul to soul. That namaste, this, the divine within me greets the divine within you, which also means this is amazing energy for forgiveness, for healing. We mentioned the new moon was going to plant seeds about healing. Here we see energy of the culmination, perhaps, of healing. What do I need to release? We mentioned earlier, full moons are about releasing. So what is it in relationship? What is the pain? What is the wound? What is the energy that I need to offer forgiveness to myself or others, that I need to be able to release, to let go? Maybe here it's like, really the deep dive that Pluto made us have has brought up some pain, and now it's time to shed that. It isn't about having to hold it and think about it and mentally process. It's about bringing it up, giving it love, letting it go, letting it transform back into all things come from love ultimately. With this kind of Pisces energy, I feel like that is a mindset we can all get into. That is a heart space we can all find. So I'm really hoping that rather than just floating in confusion and idealism and then disappointment as everything falls off those pedestals, I hope that many of us are choosing to really dive into opening ourselves spiritually, connecting with nature, with God, Goddess, all that is, with the souls of the people that we love, that we care for, and being able to let go of the things that block that beautiful flow of love.
I think that's so beautifully said, and I don't think we should talk about anything else. I think that's such a lovely summary and ending to our chat today.
Yeah.
Aw.
Thank you for that.
Well, I'm curious to hear how people's full moon reveals itself for them. So as always, I would love it if you guys are listening to us either on Spotify, on Amazon Music, on Apple Podcast, on YouTube, put some comments. There hasn't been a lot of perhaps flow from us as we've been busy with our other astrology pursuits, but I promise to look, and if people comment, to comment back. I'm very curious to see if this lunation is powerful for you the way I'm anticipating it's going to be for me and us.
Same.
It would be very interesting to hear what people experience.
Yeah. Do you want to wrap up by giving some parting tips about how you're planning to work with this and share maybe some things that might be useful for others?
Sure, I can start. I will probably be working more with the full moon and that Pluto. So looking at the transformation and the shadow side of my needs and the needs of others. So definitely doing some journaling around full moon, and looking really closely in the mirror on how do I express my needs and the need for independence in the relationship, and how do I find that harmony between my partner's needs and making sure that his needs are met and fulfilled as well.
Gorgeous.
I would say something similar, to look at the relationships, to look at what's fair and what do you feel are the things that you gain, and where can you work with your role, and what's important for you, and also not being spontaneous, but maybe not making decisions, but just going through it on a mental level and for yourself. Might clear some things for you and give you some new ideas.
Not surprisingly, I'm going to be working a lot with this Pisces energy. Lately, I've been learning a lot about how our body, our physical body, can hold our emotions. So we bring emotions up and we think we've, released them, but really I've released them from my mind, but they're not gone. They're either in my cell structure somewhere. And I feel like the moon always for me is about my body. And so I'm really going to be doing some work with water. People talk about with Pisces going to the ocean, go to the lake, take a bath, and that's wonderful. Though that's not a reality for me with this particular lunation with the timing. So I think I'm going to do something I read about that is from the cultures, native indigenous cultures in Hawaii, where you actually take water and you start to visualize all the pain, all the ick, all the things you're holding, and you let it out into the water, and then you start to visualize all the joy in life and all the beauty and all that gives you love, and you start to put that energy into the water and allow it to just transmute everything that is not of higher self, of divine love, is transformed back into divine love. When you feel like that's there, then you drink it. The idea is that you're creating this cycle of giving and receiving love and energy. So I think I'm going to be working with that and definitely getting a massage beforehand to try to help my body release. It's a full moon. I want to let go. I want my physical cells to release any emotion that has come up, or even just the toxins that came from emotions that came up previously, but they're still kind of lingering. Sort of that, reset. And that's something I don't do very often, taking care of the physical self that way, in that kind of nurturing. So I think between those two, I'll do some shadow work unintentionally, and I'll do some nice healing work, and hopefully that Pisces energy will just let it all flow.
Sounds lovely.
All right. Well, let's check back in 2 weeks and see how all of this worked out for us, and keep an eye on the comments, and look forward to hearing our viewers' thoughts and impressions about how this full moon is manifesting for them.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for joining us in this week's Astro Chat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. Astro Chat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support Astro Chat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.